So today, this evening, we begin this elevated sense of rejoice. Why? Rejoice because we're over the halfway mark in Advent. We're now on the downhill slide to Christmas. And what a great day to celebrate that, because it snowed earlier this morning, and now we can slide in the snow on our way to Christmas. I'm rejoicing that it snowed, because if it's going to be cold, you better give me something to play in. Why else are we rejoicing? Sledding in snow might be kind of, all right, big deal. Things in the news to some people are rejoicing over, not everyone. Some people are rejoicing over the imminence of a vaccine for COVID, a couple of different vaccines in America. A couple companies might be able to start distributing as early as Monday, maybe. Not everyone is all excited about that one, though. While the Archdiocese, I don't know if you've seen this, has put out an article in the Catholic Voice a while back with Dr. Doran regarding the medical ethics and how we can respond to this vaccine or the vaccines and the things that we need to be aware of, from the different companies about whether or not these are something that we can take. The two main runners that from Moderna and Pfizer have been given the okay from Catholic theologians, moral theologians. There's an asterisk by that, though. And that's why not everyone is rejoicing over this. Because there's been some sort of involvement in the making of these vaccines, as have other vaccines that aren't nearly as far along, with aborted fetal cells. The reason why these two vaccines that are the that are going to have be available in the most recent first to us, I guess, is because the remoteness to the evil act of abortion is so remote that we're not really cooperating with that evil. Again, there's an asterisk by that statement, because we still should not be happy that there was any involvement whatsoever. And if anyone's going to take that vaccine, or any of the vaccines that have even the remote involvement with something evil, we must make our protest known. Give us something that is free of evil. Why is that so difficult? In this modern world, we must protest that. Not everyone is rejoicing over these possible vaccines for other reasons as well. And we're not going to get into that. But just know, some people are rejoicing, some people aren't. This is theoretically having to do with the temporal order of whether it's going to save people's lives or not. So, snow sledding, a vaccine. I think there's something even more important to rejoice over, things in the news. Maybe you haven't heard of this, though, that actually has to do with the salvation of souls. Not just the salvation of bodies, lungs, but souls. Over this past summer, there was a worldwide conference, a week-long conference done digitally of several different movers and shakers and companies and concerned people about human trafficking and all the different categories that fall into that. And from that, more networking was able to happen, cross information, good types of good communication happening. And articles being written in the BBC, and most recently in the front page, an op-ed in the New York Times, to bring light to concerns regarding certain companies and how they actually are favoring human trafficking and things that go against the dignity of the human person. There's in particular, so here's the things to rejoice over. From the communication and now just more awareness, there's a particular website that I'm not going to name that is one of the most popular websites for people to go to for sinful activity. And recently, PayPal has stepped away from saying we're not going to be involved with that website anymore. Any sort of paid services on that website are not going to come through us. And most recently, MasterCard and Visa have said we will not profit from their activities either. So that's a huge win. There's a lot more work to be done. First of all, our culture has to change. We have to stop going to those websites because they are actually, it's still the case where people are being monetized. They're being given money for uploading videos that go against the dignity of the human person, and pictures that go against the dignity of the human person. So our hearts in our nation and around the world still has a lot of change to do, but this is a good step forward in the salvation of souls, freeing people from this degradation and misuse of the human person. That's a great thing to rejoice. Still more work to do, though. In this season of Advent, what are we ultimately rejoicing in? We are rejoicing in the power of Jesus, the power and the love of our God, that He is the one who comes to save us. Not a vaccine, not someone who gives us emotional support, even if it's sinful. There's an emotional sort of calmness because of watching something sinful. It's Jesus who comes and saves us. And so we rejoice now that we're over the halfway mark towards Christmas. And so during Lent and during Advent, we have the purple, the royal purple and the penitential color purple. And when we reach the halfway mark or just over the halfway mark, we recognize that we're getting closer to what can be in the middle of this Advent wreath, the white Christmas candle, white meaning purity. And when we combine white and purple, we get a lighter color. So we're getting close to Christmas. So we rejoice. We're getting, so same thing in Lent. Use a different Latin word, and I'll explain that during Lent maybe, hopefully. But the fact that we're getting close to our Savior, two different aspects in his life during Advent and during Lent, but both of which are so pertinent to our salvation. So what other things are you going to rejoice in tonight, tomorrow, and all week? Yes, the things that are temporal, but also, more importantly, pay attention to the spiritual, to the eternal things to be rejoicing over. And then remember this, what St. Paul tells us in our second reading. The one who calls you is faithful. And of course, this is Jesus. Jesus is the one who calls all of us to follow him all the way to union with God the Father in heaven. And he is faithful to us, and he will also accomplish it. Our salvation. It's Jesus that accomplishes it. And the fruition and the accomplishment is something to rejoice in. It's interesting because in our gospel, we hear of St. John the Baptist, who may have been actually more popular than Jesus. There's some interesting thoughts behind that one because of a Jewish historian named Josephus who writes about Jewish history, and he mentions Jesus, but he mentions John the Baptist more. There was more of a popularity amongst their people with John the Baptist than with Jesus. Right? It was Herod that killed John the Baptist. It was the Jews who arrested and then gave over to Pontius Pilate, Jesus. So here is one where they ask, who are you that you're doing these amazing things, John? Who are you? Are you Elijah? Nope. Are you the prophet? Which means Isaiah, who we heard from in our first reading. Nope. But instead, I am who Isaiah spoke of, the one crying out in the desert, prepare the way for the Lord. That's something to rejoice in. Just the preparations that the Lord is being faithful enough to be the one to come to you. He's not waiting for us. He's making the move, and he's coming to you. Now, some of that might cause some trepidation internally, but ultimately it's meant to cause great rejoicing. And so if you're hesitant to rejoice, then pray about that. What needs to be cut away that will let go of the things that are binding me from rejoicing in the Lord, so that I can go back to happiness, that I can go back to rejoicing. And if when you hear that the Lord is faithful and is coming to you first, and you're rejoicing because of that, then let others know. And encourage others to be rejoicing as well, in a listening sort of way. So don't just pridefully like, hey, I'm happy, you should be happy too. No, I'm happy. How are you? I want to hear from you. You're not quite as happy? You're happier than me? Great. You're not quite as happy? Tell me why. How can I help? Is there any way? Yeah, leave me alone. Okay. I'll pray for you. Can I do that? I'll pray over you right now. Lord, bring rejoicing into this person's life. That's it. Prayer done. Nice and quick. Pray that God would help you to rejoice, even in the midst of all the craziness of our life, whether it's because of what's happening in 2020 or because of other things that are just part of life, that are crazy, that you would find that Jesus is still coming for you. And that's something to be rejoicing in, because he wants you to be joyful and to be freed from all the things that are holding you back. May we be rejoicing today and forever.